think that is why when someone says to me, just be yourself, I'm like, fuck you.
How the fuck can you expect somebody to be themselves when every time you meet them, they are different?
Being yourself becomes a virtuous circle. It can work either way, virtuous circle or vicious cycle, whichever you happen to be in the habit of living into. Welcome back to Live Into Your Brilliance, the place where myself and Bilos, today without a guest, have a bunch of fun blowing up, dismantling illusions that hold us back from the truth that's already here, which is that we are brilliance and we just need to wake ourselves up to that fact. How are you doing, brother?
Good, thanks.
So here's, mate, what's on our docket today for the listener, what I think is in it for them. The topic that we're going to look at is, I guess, what do we mean by being yourself? But actually, more importantly, what's the opportunity in it? And what's the challenge? Like, what is it that we need to really see about it in order to be able to exploit the opportunity? And in my opinion, what makes it hard? Like, that and I think I've said it on here a few times, I have a little bit of a thing about when people throw away the comment of, hey, just be yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And when we really see what it means, it's like, whoa, they are really being themselves. It's actually when you're in the presence of someone that you go, they're really being themselves. It's a very specific experience. That's at least how it looks to me. Or if when I notice, wow, like I was really being myself there, then I sometimes actually amaze myself and go, geez, that felt different. So that's what we're going to explore today.
Yeah. And I understand why you have an issue with when people say it, but I think we should unpack that a little bit for the listener. And my understanding, well, okay, let me take a stab at this. My understanding of why you have an issue with it, and by the way, I share your sort of the twist in the gut when I hear that, is because on one level, being yourself, I think, is an illusion that means we fall into this concept of, oh, well, this is my identity, this is who I have to be all the time, right? So that's like the one level. And then the next level down is, well, to truly be yourself, which, by the way, I think is impossible. So, but we'll get into that. You have to be willing to throw open the electric box on how human beings are wired and take a deep look there. And only when you've looked there can a sense of the true self come through. And that's what you and I call being home. And then to your point, well, then what's on offer from there? But to go there, you got to do a lot of work. You got to be curious. And that's why I think you have a real issue with it, because it's all of that and more.
Yeah, I think you're right. When I think of what does it mean to be ourselves, and actually, why do I have such an issue with that throwaway statement? Is number one, the reason I actually think I have a real issue with it is because it's a throwaway statement. It's just something that people throw around, and it's a kind of glib, get out of jail quickly card when people are feeling a bit stuck, or they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And they're like, oh, just be yourself. And it's kind of to me, it often sounds like, listen, I'm not really that interested in I'm not really that interested in what you're talking about. Like, just be yourself. Like, it'll be fine. Whereas, um, the reason why I think people are often stuck, and I think it confuses people when they hear that, just be myself. What does that really mean? And for me, what it means to be ourselves, it's being true to ourselves, being true to the self. And being true to the self is inherently challenging because it means letting go of all the stories and the narratives that we might have running about the implications of what that means, about what other people might think, about what that might result in. Um, it even, to your point, means letting go of the idea of who we think we are and trusting what is coming through us real time.
Mm.
Now, what I mean by that in really simple terms, as an example, would be, and I've felt this, and I've felt myself lean into it, and I've felt myself hold back to it. But a really simple example for me is often when, let's say, you're in a meeting, in a work environment, and perhaps you're in a meeting with some senior folks or with a really important customer or something. Like it looks on the face of it like it's high stakes.
Mm.
And you have this sense to say something, but you don't say it because you question, like, what, who am I to say it? What would it mean to say that? Like, what if people don't react the way we want to do, or the way I might hope that they will? And so we hold ourselves back. And then we give ourselves shit about holding ourselves back. We're like, what's going on there? And in my simple terms, I'd be like, oh, what happened there was I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself to say what was coming through in me because I allowed my intellect, I allowed my like noisy mind to get in the way and to run a quick evaluation procedure on what was coming through and go, whoa, 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 I'm not sure that feels safe. So I don't know if we should do this. And we hold ourselves back and we feel ourselves holding back. And the flip of it, if we were being ourselves, we would just say it. We'd be like, we just put it into the room and we would see what happens. And it doesn't mean, I don't think that means that does that mean always good stuff happens when you say what you want to say, or everything work out? I'm like, I have no idea. It's just what it means to be yourself is to let go of the idea that what happens next even matters. It's it's playing the game of letting go of all of that. That to me is a very simple example of what it means to be ourselves. And I think that shows up everywhere. It shows up in all of our relationships. It shows up uh, in how we like live our lives. It shows up like in our job choices. It shows up in how we like. It almost shows up in how we do anything. Is are we trying to figure it all out and to manufacture a way of being and manufacture an outside life for ourselves? Or are we saying, I am eschewing all of that? I'm like letting that go. And rather, the game I'm going to play is I'm going to play being myself and I'm going to let the cards fall where they may. And I believe that is the number one game in town. I just think it's actually, in one sense, it's the trickiest game in town because it goes contrary to a huge amount of the societal conditioning and the conformist, um, the kind of conformist zeitgeist that exists pretty much everywhere in the world now. That like, here's the box that you need to try and fit into, and you don't necessarily get rewarded for not doing it.
So I think there's a really important thread that I want to pull on here. Let's take the example you gave of being in the meeting, because I think that's a great example where I'm sure everybody listening to this has experienced this. You're in a meeting, whether it's a family meeting or a business meeting, whatever, you're in a gathering and conversations happening, and you feel this compulsion to put something out there that you know it. I mean, you feel it in your chest is is additive or needs to be said, but you don't do it, and then like you said, you berate yourself afterwards. The come from when you get that feeling, or you utter those words, or don't utter them, but the genesis of that. I'm curious about your take on that, because at a very glib level, like, oh well, if I'm sitting in a meeting and I think somebody's a prick, I should just say they're a prick, and that's not necessarily right. and so and
Yeah.
so I just want to pull on the thread a little bit, because I go back to what you said earlier about be yourself means be true to the self, and from that place speak your truth.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll give you an example that happened that I only heard about today. It's not my example, but I can give you a really good one. Because it was very similar. It wasn't in a meeting, but it was an exchange of views. And a situation had happened for one of my clients, and one of their really important stakeholders in the company had an issue with what they'd done, and told them that. It's like, hey, I don't agree with what you've done, and gave them all their reasons for why that was the case. And this person said that, like, at first when they got the email back, like they were they were riled up, to your point. Like, they had an immediate reaction, a kind of like I think a kind of a what the fuck kind of reaction. Whoa. But they did nothing. They didn't do anything straight away. Actually, spent the whole weekend kind of settling down, and actually using their language, arguing with themselves in their mind. Like, but what they were really doing as well was playing out all sorts of consequences, because they knew deep down what their truth was. But when it took them a little bit. So we've often talked about how we feel ourselves getting really uptight, like we have an immediate, like when we've been triggered by something, we can often go straight into the basement of our thinking and get very close-minded. We're not saying that we want to operate from there, but in this case, this person noticed it, and then they settled down, and I think it was like at the end of the weekend, they just sent a very short, very polite note saying, boom, this is what I'm going to do, and like, thanks for your note, but this is where I am. And they said to me, it felt amazing. Not because of any other reason other than they were like, that's my truth. And it's like, I'm not sure how they're going to feel about that, but that's not my job. It's like I was just being true to myself. And so the come from is important. And sometimes we have to take a beat. And in that example for her, like, it was a 2-day beat to go, whoa, because it was dealing with a scenario like you said there, where someone's like, hey, I'm thinking you're being a prick. And you go, well, that's not really a truth. That's your judgment. That's your reaction. But in a meeting like that, I would always say, because I've been in many meetings where I've had that thought, that when you give it a second and you calm down, there is something that you actually do want to say. Or sometimes there's nothing you want to say. You'd like, but it's being true to yourself. It's like, oh, actually, I don't care about that. I'm letting that go. Or, hey, there is something that I want to say here. And I think to kind of just try and conclude my take on the thread that you've quite rightly pulled on is what we're talking about. This is why that comment of, like, just be yourself is a glib comment, because being true to yourself is non-trivial. Like being true to yourself is often the it is the practice, because to be true to yourself, you also have to take that sacred pause. You have to take that sacred pause, and you have to be prepared to listen for what is true for me now. Not what do I think is true, but what is true. And often the answer you get is can be really challenging, can be uncomfortable. And you're like, I don't like, I don't, we don't always even like what it, in the moment, what it means to be true to ourselves. And yet when we practice it, we start to realize, fucking hell, like that actually feels good. And suddenly the consequences actually don't matter as much. That's what I also find really interesting. Before we take the action that's being true to ourselves, the consequences and all the potential outcomes or implications look really freaking important. And the minute we take the action, we don't care. We're like, oh, okay, well, and we're suddenly totally okay with whatever shows up next. More often than not, that's what it looks like to me. More often than not, we're suddenly we're kind of we are home again, and we are we are happy with exactly where we are, and we feel a sense of relief. At least, actually, that's my experience. I often feel a sense of relief when I stop trying to figure it all out, and I just think, oh fuck it, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say it, or I'm going to do it. I'm going to be true to myself. There's a real sense of relief that comes with expressing myself truly.
And do you think that relief is because you're no longer a prisoner to your narratives?
Yeah, I think so. And you're no longer resisting. It, you often say this, it can be exhausting to
Yeah.
kind of try and live up to your narratives. I think it's that. It's like when I'm not being myself, eh, I notice two things. One, I have to expend a lot of effort in trying to be the thing that I think I need to be. And I also have to expend a lot of effort, like resisting and kind of dismissing the kind of nudges that are coming internally. I've got to kind of push one thing down. I've got to project another thing out, and that's hard work. And it fuels, for me at least, it fuels a real sense of self-evaluation. And I don't mean of the self. I mean probably of my humanness. I then am evaluating. Well, did I do a good job? Did it work? Did it work? I put on a show. Did it work? Because the reason you put on a show is very simple: is you're trying to entertain people, and then you need feedback. Like, are you entertained? Do you like me? You know, uh, and when you don't get that, it's heartbreaking,
Mm.
because you have to exist in the void now, which is, damn, like I wasn't being myself, which means I don't trust myself. I didn't even get feedback on my performance of who I was trying to be. So now I'm going to spend quite a bit of time just waiting for this to pass, because I have to. I'm in suffering of, you know, doing a bit of self-loathing, along with trying to figure out what do I do next time to try and make sure that it works. And that is, like, I don't know if that's familiar to anyone listening, but like that's an experience that I have more often than I care to admit. And I think that is why when someone says to me, just be yourself, I'm like, fuck you. Because it's sometimes hard, and because I've spent a lot of time kind of sometimes trying to get things right. I have to work really hard to tune back into the self, because it's kind of like it can sometimes be quite a weak signal, because I've spent so much time putting my attention elsewhere, that you have to reconnect with, you have to, being yourself is a lifelong practice, and you've got to reconnect back in and go, okay, actually I do know, let me try that. And you do it and you get that sense of relief. And the people who I experience being themselves, I think that's why it's so powerful, because you can see that they are so practiced that it's no longer, it's gone to that whatever, that it's so unconsciously, it's not a competence thing, it's just, they're like, it looks confusing to them that you'd be any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. One useful construct, I guess, that I have taken from you about the futility of trying to be yourself at the most superficial level, i.e., the my identity level, is what you always say about, no man steps into the same river twice, or no person, I should say. And the idea that the this identity that I've created for myself, like I'm a killer, I'm a I'm a superstar, I'm a alpha, I'm a introvert, I'm a, like, whatever, like whatever you've attached. And you know you assume that you've, like, at some point along the continuum of life, you've kind of pegged it, and now you have this static sense of you. But to use your lovely analogy about stepping into the water, the Heraclitus quote is you are constantly not who you think you are
Mm.
as a result of experience and the changing nature of the world you operate in. But we doggedly cling to this kind of static idea of who we are, despite the maelstrom and the stream we're in. And so that is very useful for me. Like, that is, when I think about being yourself, you're like, okay, well, on that level, that's just ridiculous. And then it makes me chuckle when I think about the concept of, oh, my identity, like, this is who I am as a human being. And you're like, okay, well, that's a wonderful story. I hope that prison doesn't enclose you for too long. And oh, by the way, anytime you want to just pull the door open, it's open. You can step out. But then I love the idea of, but we are all in the river. We are the river, and being true to yourself, you see that we are the river. We are one with the river. And so, going back to your earlier comment, like, what is on offer from there? If you are no
Mm.
longer worried about the static soul or form that steps into the river, and you accept that you are one with the river, what is on offer from there? And that is something that I think about a lot.
Mm.
And I love musing on it, because it both
Mm.
makes me chuckle and then it gets me super excited. And I think you're right. I think it can be very intimidating as well. Like, letting go of those stories and realizing, no, I am one with all of this. And really all I have to do when we break it down to sort of practice terms is take the sacred pause, fall back into that place of kindness and love, and then take a step from there, because you can't get it wrong.
Mm.
And I hate using that phrase, you can't get it wrong, because I mean, you and I have debated with our guests and with ourselves, like this concept of wrong and right is that's a booby trap in itself. That's an illusion in itself. But in the spirit of this conversation, and to channel, Christy Helverson, what if you couldn't get it wrong? What would you do knowing that you are one with the river?
Well, so let's go there. Like I'm with you, and I both get excited about it, and then I go, okay, what does that really mean? What does that really mean? And I love that you've gone there. What would you do if you knew you couldn't get it wrong? The reason why that's such a powerful question is because it allows you to get home quicker, I think. It's like, well, if I couldn't get it wrong, we immediately know what being true to ourselves looks like. If I couldn't get it wrong, it's like, boom, we're there. And then we have the, yeah, but moment. But it might go wrong. What could that look like? Well, not everyone might agree with me. Not everyone might even be happy with what I do or say. It might not work out the way that I think it should work out. And it's like, yeah, that's all true. That's all true. And that doesn't mean you're getting it wrong. That's just the way the world works. And actually, that's the way the world works, even when you're trying to not be yourself. That's just the way the river works. And it works that way because rivers don't give a fuck. Pardon my French. Like, the river's being a river. And sometimes it's like smooth and calm. And sometimes it's like raging rapids. And then the river flows into the ocean. And, all of a sudden, like, you're in the ocean. It is like this incredibly complex, random, unexplainable unfolding. And it's going to unfold how it unfolds. And because there is this idea, I guess, of separation, human beings to me they're like the waves, they're the waves of the river, they're the waves of the ocean. They just show up differently all the time. But you caught it perfectly when you said, but our humanness likes to try and fix things, as they want to make things static. Oh, well, that's who Mark is. So I know who Mark is, or I know who Al is, and I want them to stay like that. And so sometimes we're also confused when someone else shows up and they're different. And you're like, what's up? And like, nothing's up. But you said something that's different to what you said before, and we get disturbed by someone else being themselves in the moment. It was different to the last time they showed up. And then we'll say, I think there's something up with Mark. I think, he's changed. He's changed. I think we might need to get rid of Mark. You're like, why? Why? He's not the same guy. I'm like, well, no, he's not the same guy.
No, that's just so funny. And it just made me chuckle, because I often have this stupid thought, but it does make me laugh. Is like, when you meet somebody, if I was introducing you to somebody, and I said, oh, have you met Alan before? The answer always has to be no. Never met Alan. And I just keep laughing about that, because it's like, like the L that I get to hang out with on this podcast, or in person when I come over to the UK, or you come here. it's not the guy I get to hang out with next time. And
Oh, it's like a different version. The
it's a
spirit, the
different
soul is still
version.
the same.
You have
Yeah,
a billion new cells in your body from when I met you
yeah.
last. Like,
That is like
and
that
the
is when it gets
only
funny.
it is funny. It is funny because
Yeah.
because then the honest truth is I've never met Alan. So how the fuck can you expect somebody to be themselves when every time you meet them, they are different? So they have absolutely no clue what they're meant to be. And the static pin is obsolete the moment you drive it in. And the only constant is the divine energy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was like, the only constant is spirit or soul or whatever it is that's not this spacesuit. Because even the idea of the spacesuit, like this thing, like we definitely don't look like we looked when we met each other 18 years ago. It's
Speak for
like,
yourself, brother.
well, I look better, well, but that's okay. I know that you've taken that as some sort of an insult, so don't need to go there. Um, but that is just so cool to know. And the bit that came up for me as you were talking, it's like, so what is one of the keys to being yourself? Like to being true to yourself is there's only one place that you can be true to yourself, and it's in the present moment. It's like it's nothing more than it's as trivial as um, going and making a cup of tea because that's what's true for you right now, to calling, saying something really challenging to the CEO of your company in an all hands. They're the exact same thing. They're a moment in time, and it's just that moment. And it's actually it's not very, it's amazing and in one sense extraordinarily ordinary, is that, that it's just about in this moment, like we are being ourselves now, not trying to be anything else. Like we don't rehearse these podcasts, we're literally saying the next thing that comes into our heads. um and it's funny, and we're like, this is kind of cool. And that's it. And when we're going off base is when we're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do for another moment. What's like, who do I need to be in order to? And it's like, no, what if that is all taken care of by the self? Like, and this is where, that I think I've brought up here numerous times, that quote that gets attributed to Albert Einstein. The most important question that we need to answer is whether or not we believe the universe is friendly. And it's just one of those fun questions. But if you believe that actually you're made of universal intelligence, like if you believe you're made of the stardust of the universe, if you believe you are a child of God, like if you see that there's something more at play. And even from an atheist perspective, like I think of Sam Harris, who goes, if you're asking me, do I believe in God? The answer is no. If you're asking me, do I believe there's something bigger at play? Then the answer is yes. If you see that, then being yourself is knowing that you are the river.
Mm.
And then being yourself is an act of faith. That's what being yourself is. Like it is an act of faith in service of that, of the source that you're made of, and it's trusting in all of that. And in one sense, it's where sometimes I will notice I'm being hypocritical, because I'll say yes, I and I am. I'm like, I have total faith that whatever comes through me is meant for me. And then I notice that I resist it. And it's like, wow, that's interesting. Now you can come back and go, hey, Al, like, what's your choice? Because if you're going to say this, then you have the opportunity to practice it every day. And the real practice is in those moments where it kind of is the twist of the soul. And you're like, oh, even this? It's like, even this. I actually think that sits at the heart of what we're talking about is, you know, getting to the point and asking ourselves that question, like, do you believe that there's something greater at play? Um, because I guess if you don't believe that, you must have to try and figure it out, even if I think it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I just want to share something that came up for me while you were saying that, which I think the listener could experiment with
Mm,
in the spirit of practice. What I've noticed happen through this understanding is I'm no longer intimidated by people.
mm,
And let me explain that a little bit more. I I have a very fortunate place that I come from in terms of the people that I meet. Now, that's a story. I get it. That's a narrative, but just bear with me here. So, in the greater Boston community, but even beyond the boundaries of Boston, out there in the world, I get to meet some extraordinary people because of the the family I work for, the things we have done, the things we're involved in. Like you get to meet some pretty beautiful people. And Billows used to get super intimidated by that.
mm,
And I get it. Like if you looked at my curriculum vitae and said, "Oh, well, he's got a great education and he's achieved a lot in business, like why is he intimidated?" But it comes back to the attachments and the narratives and being in that little prison. But what I've found most interesting along this journey is I've stopped seeing people, I've stopped seeing the spacesuits,
mm,
and I only see the souls. And I give you a really good example. I went to a dinner this week on Wednesday night. Vanny and I went. We were invited. Very closed uh, dinner. Two of the guest speakers were like these incredibly well thought of women. One had served under Barack Obama, served under Biden, leading the charge in the White House. And another one was um, an amazing leader in the current administration in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then sitting around the table were CEOs of some of the most progressive, high value companies in the world. I think I was the only non CEO at the table, apart from the other people from the organization that I'm involved in. And it was the perfect environment for spacesuits to be on full display and there to be a lot of intimidation about who's got the shiniest spacesuit. And I didn't see any of that. I just saw 12 souls around the table. And it allowed me to have a great evening and ask questions without a flutter of the heart. And I think and so I love your story about the boss, because we've been there. Like, the idea of challenging the boss publicly, or going into the boss's office after the all hands or after the meeting and then having that conversation. I would love everybody to try have a conversation with somebody that you think is going to be tricky, when you just see them as a bright soul. If you just see them as a ball of divine energy and look past the spacesuit, and by spacesuit I mean the title, the authority, the power, the good hairdo, the everything, all of that crap, and see what happens from there. Because when you are in the river, going back to that analogy, when you see your boss or the person you're having the conversation with as an extension of your divine energy, as a connected soul, as part of the connected consciousness of the universe, and you can only, and I think this gets really at the heart of the answer to your question about, Albert Einstein's thought-provoking challenge. When you get to that point, you can only feel kindness and love. And so you can then converse from there. And how can you possibly, you can't get it wrong.
So I think that's a great experiment, and like I'm even thinking about personally. Let me ask you a question though. So you said there was a time in your life when you would have been intimidated or experienced like kind of intimidation, perhaps some insecurity. So what was the journey from there to here? What would you put down and say, well, this is the practice that has supported that?
The answer that comes up for me is, I've always seen human beings as beautiful souls. In fact, even in my corporate life, I would refer to people in emails, group emails, as beautiful people. And I would use the word love extensively throughout my communication. And I did that unashamedly. And I think the practice for me, through my increased understanding, is to trust that more, and to constantly ask the question, when I feel the pang of insecurity or the pang of intimidation or the pang of fear, is to constantly go back to that brilliant question that came up in the last episode, or a version of it, which is, what the hell is going on here?
Mm.
And see the bullshit story for what it is, and go back to seeing the beautiful people and sending them lots of love, and falling back into just trusting that, and falling into the fire of it, like just letting, not trying to understand it, but just going, because you your wisdom knows it's right, irrespective of what the intellect is saying. And so, if I had to pin it to one thing, I think that the one thing, the one bit of the practice that has deepened my faith in this is that pause. It is the observation of the me by the I, and then the smile and the falling back into the lazy boy of the consciousness. That has been the most powerful thing that I have learned to do. And now it happens really quickly, but
Mm.
it's the most powerful thing that has changed that perspective. And so now when I walk into those rooms, like I just want to hug everybody. And it's super weird for people, but I'm so excited. I'm like a puppy dog
It's super
with
weird
a
because you're six
giant
foot
tail.
six, and
Yeah, exactly. No, it's horrible. It's really messy.
but see, I think, mate, that is amazing, and I also feel like almost like compelled to translate that a little bit into. I don't want to. I don't, because there's part of that that feels a little bit inaccessible to me. But and that's not, by the way, necessarily a reflection on what you're saying. It's more because you are, like, I think, as you said, like, you're one of the people who, I think now, as you said, happens so quickly, and you walk into the room and it. But you know what came to mind for me, because I've got my theory on, actually the practice. It kind of sits in that phrase, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And what jumped into my mind was seeing you wearing Christmas jumpers at Mimecast, like for the whole month of December. And I remember a story that you were telling me about, and I can't remember what it was. It was either a board meeting or there was some massive customer coming in. And I remember seeing you, and you had this jumper on with like little bulbs on it that were lit up. And you were laughing. And I was like, "Are you going into the meeting like that?" And you went, "Fuck it, yeah. Like, I'm not changing for anybody. Like, these guys they might think they're a big deal, but like, well, of course not." And to me, that is the practice. It's actually letting go of the idea, to your point, like, see everyone as beautiful souls, but actually letting go of the idea that anything else matters. And so it becomes the practice is everywhere. In we met with Jasmine Desbiens the other day, and what really struck me is the lies that we tell ourselves. And the more that we practice being ourselves in the simplest of ways, then the easier it is to practice being ourselves when we might come up against some place that feels a bit edgy. So if you know that you know, you're kind of you're a little bit off base just on that, oh no, I better go get changed because they might not, people might want me to look different. It's like, no, don't do that. Wear what the fuck you want to wear because you want to wear it. When your partner says something and you feel like you actually like, I disagree with that, be honest about it and say, hey, like, I don't agree with you on this. I want to talk about it, rather than, sometimes what we all do, I think, or all been guilty of about somewhere, I think, is just playing along. Going, you know what, like, fuck it, like, I'm gonna let it slide. But you're not letting it slide because it's kind of, it's catching you inside. Yeah.
Mm.
But you start to practice it everywhere. You think to yourself, you know what, I know I've got a busy afternoon, but I need to move things around. I just need to get out for a walk. You go for a walk. And then you start to build up. I think you start to build a muscle, and then you come up against the one where maybe you are invited to that dinner. And I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about your experiment, which I think is such a cool experiment. And maybe I'm expanding it a little bit. It's almost, because that is one you come up against something where you're like, I know to go to that thing. I know to put myself in that situation. And then it's like, well, give it a go. Give it a go to see what happens. And I guess and whatever happens doesn't matter. It's just, just to experience like what could happen there. But I don't know if you see that as well. But I really am seeing that in what you were saying. That's what came up for me. It's like, oh, now Bilos has been practicing this in so many ways. Like the idea of just being himself is everywhere. It's from not dressing to impress, but dressing because that's what you feel like wearing. It's not saying what people want to hear, but saying what's your truth. But from a place of love, not from anywhere else. It's like, oh, that's what's happening. It's it's a buildup of these little moments, so that you get used to it. If you've not been used to it, and the vast majority of people I meet actually, um, the vast majority of people I meet kind of push back on this. They're like, when I say it's really as simple as if you want to do something, you can do it. And the only thing that stops them is the idea of, but what if? I was like, that's irrelevant. That piece is irrelevant. And I actually would put that on the table as being the key to being yourself, is to go that the idea that what happens as a result of that matters is an illusion. It's like, who knows what will happen next? I don't know. Spending any time thinking about it is not going to help it. And yeah, like you'll have to make peace with the fact that whether you pretend to be put on a performance or be yourself, life is still going to remain a contact sport, like full stop. It just, you'll have more peace with your experience of it, because you'll be like, well, the shit hit the fan, but I'm okay with that, because like I'm being me, and I guess I will continue to deal with it from there. Curious what you make. Like, I'm curious because of what you said, like what you make about that kind of idea of it's actually it's a it's the practice everywhere in all the little things you do.
I think you're spot on. And while you were saying that, I thought of Jen Rowe, that wonderful guest we had on, whose son Kai had committed suicide, and she had started that wonderful movement, kindness, kindness with a KY, in honor of him, and her emphatic call that words matter. And if you think about how much of our day is spent in conversation, typing words, reading words, listening to words, to your point, the practice is a combination of a lot of things. But another key one for me is, in combination with the observation and the pausing, is then the choice of words. And I'm not saying, I'm not for a moment saying, oh God, you have to agonize over the perfect word. But being true to the self means you converse from a place of love and kindness, and so your words do matter. They will be caked in that essential ingredient if you're true to the self. And so it's just a lovely way to catch yourself and kind of check in and say, oh, what's going on here? Why did that sounded a little harsher than I intended, or that doesn't sound very nice, or am I sugarcoating this too much? Or, just kind of it's again, it's that curiosity and that observation, but it, but the words do matter, and you spend a lot of your day using words.
Yeah.
And when you, and it's there's nothing like the listeners probably freaking out here. It's not like, it's not like you have to spend the whole day editing yourself. You don't. You but you they're a great signifier to let you know where you're coming from.
There were the words as you were saying it. That's what came up for me. It's just as you always bring it back to. The words signify where you're coming from. The feeling of the words signify where you're coming from. And if the feeling is there, then you almost don't have to worry so much about the words.
100%.
It's really going. And I love the way you went, oh, hang on, like that sounded a bit off, and then being able to go back and go, hang on, like, and the maybe the piece that I would add on to that, which came up as you're talking, why words matter. If one is in the habit of talking shit about other people, it's really hard to be yourself. Because if you're in the habit of talking shit about other people, it means you're also in the habit of judging other people. And you have to fear that then from others, because you know that you do it. Whereas actually, the more that you see and stop doing that and go, oh, like, it doesn't matter. Whatever's going on for them, they're showing up best they can. I've no idea what's going on for them. I'm not going to spend any time judging them. Even if it's something that's like, oh, yep, it's not for me, but it's not for me to judge. Like, they're doing them. I'm going to do me. I actually think that's a critical element of being yourself, is to give up on the habit of talking ill of others and being able to go, hey, like, I can accept, I can be okay with everything. And it doesn't mean that I have to kind of have it in my world and be like, it's not for me, but it's also not for me to judge. But then I can come back and I'm just going to do me. I think that's kind of two sides of the same coin. It fits very nicely with what you say. Like, your words matter because you hear yourself talking to the world. And if what you hear is resonant of, like, if it's resonant of the goodness of your spirit, then I think it becomes a virtuous circle. And I think that's where you are. Like, I think what I hear in what you've been talking about is that, like, you see everyone, you see the soul, not the spacesuit. And so therefore, like, you're not engaging with the kind of transient nature of how people show up. Like, you're kind of going, you see the innocence there, which means that you're not trying to show up with your spacesuit and impress. It's become a virtuous circle, and that's just a cool way to think of it. Like, being yourself becomes a virtuous circle. To be yourself, you have to accept others as themselves, and it can kind of work. It can work either way: virtuous circle or vicious cycle, whichever you happen to be in the habit of living into.
Yeah. And this is a topic for another episode, because I'd love to dig into this. But, when we were together in Wales, when we were driving back, we started listening to those telepathy tapes. And and what's really interesting for me is these children, or these individuals with severe autism, who have lost the ability to speak or find it very difficult to converse without an aid. Some of them are not even aware that they have a body. So they communicate via telepathy with their parents, or and other people across the world. They meet on the hill, and that we'll get into that in another episode. but they're not even aware that they have a body. They have to be made aware that they have a body. They and the punchline, and I here's a spoiler alert. So if you don't want to hear the punchline, turn away now. But the punchline is like, what is life all about? To a person, these beautiful human beings who can communicate across space and time with their minds, they can do incredible things. They all come back to the same thing. It's all about, we are sent here to cultivate kindness and love. And so when I heard that, it kind of just reinforced everything for me. And so, like going into that dinner on Wednesday, I was like, oh man, look at these bright, shiny souls. And that is exactly why we are here. And so going back to your lovely question, the Albert Einstein question, like, yes, 100%. Like for me, the universe is a kind, loving place. And knowing that allows you to fall into the true self, and then the aperture grows very, very wide from there.
Well, May, first, I don't like. I felt an upwelling of emotion as you were saying that, which was quite lovely. I also think that we just nailed our bumper sticker for life. Being yourself is kindness and love. Like full stop. Like that's it. Like the self is that's what the self is. It's what we're made of, and that's what we're trusting in, and everything else is noise. And I really felt the truth of that. But in that moment, as you said it, I was like, oh my God, that's it. Like that's the truth. And when we know that, then anyway, that felt like it just changed everything for me. In that moment, I was like, oh, I've never heard that as clearly before. So it feels like a good place for us to, maybe to wrap this one. I don't know if there's anything that you would like to just say before we close. I'm going to take up your challenge, though, and to our listeners, these conversations, in one sense, like you might be listening and going, Jesus, this goes a little bit all over the place, and yet we end up back at a very simple spot. What if being yourself is kindness and love, and that knowing that means you can really trust that, and that everything that comes from that space will ultimately, it's a ripple of kindness and love. That's all you got to worry about. And so run the experiment that Bilos invited you to do, and see what happens. But maybe it's run that experiment anywhere and everywhere, and just trust in the feeling. Trust that, and know that it's kindness and love to yourself as well as to as well as it being yourself. And we'd love for that to be your experiment of living into your brilliance this week, whenever you're listening to this podcast. But thank you, brother. What a wonderful way to end. Cool discussion. And until next time, folks, we bid you farewell. Go forth and live into your brilliance.